Meteorologist Lena Arango. As your Gulf Coast Weather Authority, let's get you caught up on that weekend forecast.
Well,
Lena?
for starters, hopefully you're not queasy watching Chelsea on that ride because my stomach just dropped a little bit. Whew, all right. The weather, we're off to another foggy and misty start. In fact, this view of this camera, Jose, has gone down dramatically since I set it up about an hour ago. So those clouds have lowered. When I set this up, you could at least see the tops of the buildings in Uptown and Galleria. You couldn't see the downtown skyline off in the distance, and now you can barely make out like maybe the bottom half of the buildings and the lights, right? So let's take a look. Visibilities in and around the city are doing okay, 9 miles. We've got a breeze out of the south and a temperature of 71 on the thermometer. We had a brief wind shift out of the north, but that's already starting to swing back around to the south. And although winds are relatively light for now, only up to about 10 miles an hour, this afternoon is going to be breezy. Overnight, it's going to get gusty, and those gusty winds will linger into tomorrow, occasionally gusting to about 20-30 miles an hour at times until our next front arrives. We are still cashing in on some slightly cooler air to the north, but notice the farther south you go, there's a plus symbol in front of these numbers. So the warm up is going to launch us pretty quickly back into the mid 80s by the time we get to this afternoon. But if you're on the north side of town, this feels great in comparison to what we've been dealing with. Low 60s instead of upper 60s. South of I-10, well, kind of more of the same, because that front really just fizzled out to the point where you couldn't really make out where it stopped by the time it got to us. We do have patchy fog that we're dealing with once again. In fact, it's actually worse on the north side of town and on the west side of town because those temperatures have dropped closer to the dew points. So we've got a half a mile visibility in Conroe at the moment, a mile and a quarter in Wharton, and this is going to fluctuate likely over the course of the next few hours like it has been, kind of a rinse and repeat forecast. If you're headed down to the rodeo and the carnival, I will say the breezes are probably going to be a nuisance. You know this when you're outside. It's going to be a hold on to your hats kind of day. Aside from that, look for plenty of sunshine in the afternoon and daytime highs in the mid 80s.
If you're traveling for spring break this weekend, we want to warn you about some major closures on the Tomball Tollway, starting at 7
Time for justice. And while this
could see a similar
is Ford Truck Month.
Meantime, Fox 26's Coco Dominguez is not afraid.
Property has been growing over
This festival at Space Center Houston.
And I mentioned that miles an hour in case you're looking at
Break week. Let's check in with meteorologist Lena Arango.
more sticky air, Jose.
Ooh.
Yeah, we don't have any meaningful cool down until next week, but there is much more pleasant air for those outdoor activities that I think folks are going to be looking forward to. In fact, several cool downs. It's going to be a bit of a temperature roller coaster next week. For this weekend, though, we are going to be warm and breezy. That front that barely made it lifts right back north again as a warm front, and there's going to be a tightening pressure gradient between an area of low pressure that could bring the Central Plains some severe weather. So we'll see some gusty winds out of the south today and into tomorrow. Don't forget, I know not everyone's favorite, but we do lose an hour of sleep tonight. And of course, we'll spring forward at 2 o'clock in the overnight hours. And then we'll take a look at those several rounds of cooler air in case you're looking at this and saying, my goodness, this is too much for me. All right, don't forget, it's a weekend. So those rodeo events do occur earlier. If you need any information on timing, parking, all that kind of stuff, scan this QR code. It'll take you right to our rodeo page. But basically, the rodeo events start at 3. That's right around the time where we hit our daytime highs, and the frontal timing has sped up some, so it looks like today will actually be our warmer day and tomorrow will be slightly cooler. We're off to another misty, cloudy start, but we'll see some good sunshine this afternoon, again with those gusty winds occasionally to 20 or 30 miles an hour, and maybe a very brief light shower tomorrow with the passing of that front for Go Tejano Day. But I think in general we're going to make it by just fine, and also on the dry side of things. So here's that front continuing to lift north as a warm front, and I mentioned that tightening pressure gradient between this area of low pressure and an area of high pressure in the Gulf. Winds go from high to low pressure, but here's that swath of moisture with the potential risk for some strong to severe storms this weekend. Today into tonight, that includes portions of Oklahoma into Arkansas in case you're traveling for spring break. Something to keep in mind, this could disrupt travel. And then tomorrow that swings into the deep south for Sunday into Monday. So if you're going to be flying to these locations, I would certainly check your flights. All right, now time to talk about the things that folks don't really like. Daylight saving. Yes, we are still doing this. The clocks jump ahead at 2 o'clock in the morning for things that do it automatically, but don't forget your car, the stove, the microwave, things like that will tend to get you. I always forget those. And it's a great time to test batteries and smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detectors, your NOAA weather radio if you have one of those. Check your hurricane gear kit, right? See what's expired, see what you need to replace. Never too early to get ahead on that. Yes, we lose an hour of sleep, but days are going to be getting longer. Sunsets will now be in the 7 o'clock hour. Sunrises will also be in the 7 o'clock hour. So we're warm, we're for breezy this weekend, a very slim rain chance, really no meaningful rain until the tail end of the week. Here's that cooler air, highs in the 60s and 70s early next week. And then we'll be monitoring a system on St. Patrick's Day that looks to bring in more meaningful. So that's the good news. And it really just depends on your location. In general, visibilities are lower on the north side of town and also off to the west and southwest. So in and around the city, we're doing okay. And you might say, how can that be? Because this is literally the view out of our camera. It's because the cloud heights have lowered, so it doesn't look quite as dramatic at the surface, but definitely still dealing with a lot of low clouds and mist this morning. Breezes out of the south at 7 miles an hour, so they're not relatively strong for now, but they are going to crank up in intensity this afternoon, and that is going to take our temperatures from the low 60s to the north and 70s to the south dramatically higher into the mid 80s. So today likely being our warmest day of the week. We've got an area of high pressure over the Gulf of Mexico, so flow is clockwise around that, and that pumps in all this warm and humid air off the Gulf of Mexico. In addition to that, we have this area of low pressure that's going to create the potential for strong to severe storms across the central plains. So it's that tightening of that pressure gradient that creates those gusty winds to about 20 or 30 miles an hour as we make our way through the afternoon and into the overnight hours. So another mild start with clouds that should decrease into the afternoon hours. Again, those winds are going to pick up in intensity. Daytime highs will be on the warm side, but more sunshine this afternoon in the mid 80s. All right, for the podcast today, we've got Audrey the dog and her morning crew as they stop by and say hello on the morning walk. So it's another, I guess, unlikely duo, Jose. It's not a duck on a pig in a pool, but I just think it's so funny how all these cows are like coming to greet her at the gate, and she's just sitting there like, hey, look, it's me and my friends.
It's a very moving experience.
Oh, so cute.
Moving?
Oh, I see what you did there. Hats off for Jose this morning. I'm still asleep, clearly. I'll drink some more coffee. We'll see if you got any more puns on the way for next time I show this.
You can bring me a cup of coffee as
okay.
well.
On my way.
Thanks a lot. Now here's the...
And it might not be as busy then. I've noticed if you stay kind of after the concert, the lines for the food tend to go down, the lines for the ride tend to go down. So that might be your best bet there. But kind of more of the same of what we've been experiencing. Don't forget, we spring forward tonight. We do lose an hour of sleep, so maybe nap later today if you can. And then we've got several cool downs on the way for next week. So there will be better opportunities with less humid air to be kind of getting outside. For today, likely mid 80s. For tomorrow, some could get there too. This really is all dependent on the timing of our next front, which doesn't have a lot of moisture to work with. So very slim rain chances. Don't forget, this is our QR code that takes you right to our Fox 26 rodeo page with all that information, so you can plan your visits to the rodeo over this weekend and spring break accordingly. I think the biggest issue today and tomorrow is honestly going to be the wind. We'll have winds gusting to 20, 30 miles an hour into the overnight hours. So it's not like the sun goes down and the winds start to relax them. We're going to be staying on the breezy side of things. All right, tomorrow morning, we wake up warm. We're talking near 70, like near record warmth for lows. And then as we make our way into the afternoon hours, I mentioned it's all going to depend on the timing of that front. If it speeds up, a lot of us are going to end up on the cooler side of things. And if it slows down, we'll have more time to tap into daytime heating. Notice likely hitting our highs on the earlier side of things. So around 84 in Pearland at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But to the north, temperatures are already in the low 70s because you can see that front already making its way through. Then we'll cool into the 60s to near 70 for rodeo evening. So still a pretty pleasant night. That cold air advection takes time. Won't really feel those effects until we make our way into Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So Monday, we're already waking up in the 50s to near 60 degrees. And some of us might get stuck in the 60s on Monday for daytime highs. So something to kind of factor into your plans. But the good news is, you know, it'll bring in much more pleasant air. So lower humidity Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then we will gradually warm in the middle of the week ahead of our next front. Really no meaningful rain chances on the way until that next front, which is going to arrive near St. Patrick's Day. So yeah, maybe a sprinkle or an isolated shower as this front kind of works its way through. But in general, you don't have any rain to dodge for spring break outdoor activities, which is good news, because I think while most people don't really necessarily care that it's super warm or maybe cooler air is on the way, nobody wants to deal with rain for their outdoor plans. Cool down number 2 arrives next weekend. So that's closing weekend of spring break, closing weekend of the rodeo, and this cooler air draining in for the first day of spring, which is looking to be on the chilly side. So how ironic, right? We've been very springy in general, and we'll see one cool down and then another one to follow next weekend.